Earlier today, I went to brunch at a friend's house. After I'd been there for about an hour, a young couple I had never met before arrived. I was standing in the kitchen with a direct and clear view of the front door. If I were to walk straight from where I was standing, I'd walk right out the front door. I was only about 10 feet away from them. When they walked in, I saw a man, a pregnant woman, and a small girl who looked to be about 2 to 3 years old. The little girl looked shy and was holding a stuffed animal in her hand. The two adults came into the kitchen where I was standing, and we introduced ourselves. The wife and I share the same first name. Not sure if this matters at all, but I thought I'd share, since our name is not one that is super common, but also not super rare either. They were lovely people, and we had a great conversation. After introductions, we all grabbed seats in the open dining room, living room. I didn't see the little girl anywhere, but I assumed she was off playing with one of the cats at the house. The wife mentioned that she was 36 weeks pregnant and expecting their first child to be here any day now. At that time, I whispered to my boyfriend, who was sitting next to me, asking where the little girl went. He was confused AF. I then discreetly mentioned to my friend that I thought I saw them come in with a little girl. He was also confused AF and said there was no little girl there and he had no idea what I was talking about. I do not do drugs, not even smoke pot. I'm prescribed Adderall for narcolepsy, but I take it as prescribed. I have never experienced seeing or hearing anything like this before, at least not to my knowledge, I guess. I had a mimosa with brunch, but was far from being drunk, not even slightly. I do consider myself extremely spiritual. I don't know if I'm using the proper terms and all, but I'm wondering if maybe I saw the ghost of a child from a previous miscarriage. Or maybe my friend's house is just haunted. Or maybe I'm losing it. What do you all think? My whole life has been filled with crazy otherworld experiences, but the most vivid ones that I can think of often are from my childhood home, a very rural area up in the mountains. It would take us 45 minutes to an hour to get into the city, driving up and down windy and dangerous roads. I'd love to share with you and hear what you guys have to say. Back in the early 2000s, my parents and I moved into a neighborhood that was heavily involved in witchcraft, Satanism, etc. We didn't actually discover this until we had moved away, so it all made sense afterwards. We lived in this house for 5 years. Our house was 2 stories. We had a basement, which was our family room, that also had a separate office room. We detached the door to this room so it would be permanently open, directly facing the couch we would sit on to watch TV together as a family. Adjacent to the office, we had an electric piano right against the wall, so the office entrance would be on our right if we were sitting there. To go upstairs, you'd have to directly pass the office and face the door that goes into our garage. This info will be important later. The first year was fine, but gradually, the events became more malicious and sinister to the point where we couldn't take it anymore. We were likely the only Christian family in our neighborhood, and I believe others quickly caught on because we didn't celebrate Halloween and didn't participate in giving out candy to the neighborhood kids. This angered our community, even though we were kind to others and kept to ourselves for the most part. Our house was egged, and we became a target of seemingly harmless pranks and house vandalism. Then, all of the paranormal events started happening after my black cat disappeared right before Halloween. We were coming home from church one night, and it was close to midnight. We pulled into our neighborhood, and sitting on the sidewalk corner, all by himself, was a little boy in a green shirt. My parents were slightly unsettled because it's unsafe and unusual for a child to be out this late at night. They considered talking to this boy, but when we drove by him, he looked up, and my parents saw that he had no face, a completely blank slate where his face should be. Needless to say, we booked it home and my parents didn't tell me at the time, because I was maybe 5 or 6, to spare me from nightmares. But some years later, they told me this is what happened. Then, things started happening around the house. My mom and I used to take piano lessons, so one day, while my dad was cooking lunch, my mom was in the basement, practicing on the electric piano. I was in my parents' bedroom watching Stanley, a children's cartoon that was really popular back then. While my mom was practicing piano, a child's hand popped out of the office room and mimicked a child's voice, telling my mom to come and play. She thought it was me and told me to cut it out. The voice coerced her again to play, and my mom became irritated that I was distracting her from practicing. So she stomped into the office to find no one there. I'll never forget how pale she was when I heard her scream my name and run up the stairs. She asked my dad where I was, and since I heard her, I ran to her, asking what she needed from me. She asked me if I was messing with her, and I told her that I had no idea what she was talking about. My dad chimed in and said that I was in the bedroom the whole time, too. She concluded that it must have been her imagination, apologized to us, and went back downstairs. Not even 10 minutes later, she runs back upstairs, panicking, saying that the child's hand appeared again in the office, talking to her, and she knew it couldn't have been me. She was freaked out the rest of the day, for sure. Another instance was when we were watching The Ring in the basement at night. Around the time of the first jump scare of the movie, when they open the closet and see the disfigured girl, my dog starts barking like crazy at the same office entrance. He would charge at it and then back away, as if something was trying to force its way closer to us. It became really cold, and I started crying because I felt scared and uncomfortable at my dog's strange behavior. My dad turned on the light in the office, but nothing was there. My dog was going nuts, chasing something we couldn't see, so we decided to call it a night and go upstairs to bed. My dog had a big crate in the garage that he would sleep in, so my dad put him in there before we went to bed. At this point, we called a minister from our church to come and pray for us. He prayed for our protection, but things got so much worse after that. A few nights later, we all woke up to screaming coming from the garage. It sounded like a little girl being brutally unalived, screaming so loud it pierced our ears. My dog was also barking like crazy, so we knew we had to do something. My mom and I hid behind a dresser, and my dad hesitantly took a long decorative bamboo stick as his weapon to go to the garage and see what was going on. He said that he was shaking going downstairs, and the screaming got louder and more violent right up until his hand touched the doorknob. As soon as he did, complete silence. It was eerie and too quiet. The only thing making noise was my dog, whimpering and barking, so my dad got him as quickly as possible and noped right back upstairs. We started sleeping in the same room after that. Once we settled back down, my mom and I fell asleep first, but my dad was wide awake. He said that he could hear something pressing buttons on the TV remote on his bedside table. He didn't dare look, but shut his eyes and pretended to sleep until he eventually did. Another day, my mom was at work and Dad was outside mowing the lawn. Being an only child, not interested in AOL dial-up internet yet, had to find ways to entertain myself. I was spinning in circles until I'd make myself dizzy. Mid-spin, I saw a man standing in the hallway with a gun pointed right at me. I was so startled, but I was so dizzy, so I fell over, scared to death. I screamed for my dad and ran sloppily to the front door. I didn't want to look back if he was still there. Dad was worried sick for me in my panic state, but what can he do? What could any of us have done? Dad put the house up for sale and sold it to the first buyer. We were out of there so quick, it wasn't even funny. These events traumatized me, and I'm extremely hypersensitive to evil spirits and evil energy. Horror movies don't scare me at all compared to the real fear and panic you feel in those moments. Let me start this by saying, I, male 18, fully believe in the paranormal. I've always believed the stories and fully welcomed the opportunity for experiences to happen to me. Despite this, I never had a paranormal experience until 2 years ago, and I haven't really had one since. For context, I live in ultra-rural Alabama. When I say ultra-rural, I mean even the closest Dollar General is almost 20 minutes away. I live at the foot of a heavily wooded mountain. The further you drive up, the less populated it becomes. Even though I lived in this spot for my entire life, I had never driven up the mountain just because there was no need. The city was in the opposite direction of the mountain. From what I knew about going up, you just drove up and passed a few houses and eventually hit a dead end and would have to turn around. Well, one day I had a friend over and we decided we wanted to hop on my golf cart and take a little joyride up the mountain. We drove for about 30 minutes. Granted, this golf cart only goes like 25 miles per hour max, and we had only really seen some beautiful forests and passed a couple of properties. But at this point, we came upon a spot in the road with a clearing off to the right. As we got closer, I realized it was a cemetery. I pulled over into the cemetery and turned my golf cart off. The main reason for this was curiosity. I had no idea there was a cemetery up the mountain, and it was strange to me, considering we barely had anyone living on the mountain, much less this far up. So my friend and I hop out of the cart and start walking towards the graves. Like I said, I fully believe in spirits and being respectful towards the dead, but my friend didn't at the time. So I'm respectfully looking around, reading the markers, attempting to stay a 6-foot distance from the headstones so I wasn't walking on top of the graves. Well, here my friend goes, on her phone, walking all over the graves. I think she even cracked a couple of jokes about some of the names on the headstones. Some of them were kind of weird, considering the people died in the late 1800s and early 1900s. After I sufficiently explored, I started walking back to the cart. Aloud, I declare, half joking, "Thank you, ghosts, for letting us walk around your space. Sorry we walked all over your graves." My friend yells at me, "Fuck them ghosts." I just roll my eyes. But honestly, I felt a slight shiver down my spine after she said it. I was kind of nervous at this point. We both hopped back in the golf cart, and I turned the key. Of course, it wouldn't start. I turned the key multiple times, but it seemed like the battery was dead. For the 3 years I had owned this golf cart, I never had an issue with it. So in my non-skeptical brain, I immediately felt that this was happening because of what my friend said about the ghosts. But honestly, at this point, I was scared. I didn't want to believe what I was thinking. So I decided to call my dad for help. I checked my service, and I had 2 bars, so I was good on cell signal. I called him, and the phone rang 5 times before he answered. I heard nothing on the other end, so I said, "Hello?" And I could hear heavy, raspy breathing in response. As soon as my brain slightly processed what I was hearing, my dad hung up. I tried to call him back, but my cell signal had now dropped off completely, even though I hadn't moved at all. So at this point, even my friend looked scared. We're both thinking the same thing. I'm beginning to hyperventilate, and I lay my head down on the steering wheel and just began praying out loud for protection and help starting the cart. I tell my friend to pray as well, and she says, "Please let the cart start. I'm sorry for what I said." I turn the key, the cart starts, and I peel out of there as fast as possible. When I get home, my dad is outside working on one of his projects. My friend and I walk up to him, and I ask why he hung up on me because I needed help. He said he never received a call from me. I told him that's impossible because he picked up, and I heard him breathing over the phone. He showed me his recent calls, and he had no calls or missed calls from me. This was almost 3 years ago, and I haven't been back to the cemetery or had any other paranormal experiences since. Hi friends, I hope you're staying safe. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me. Thank you for listening. Sweet dreams.